ancient scripture found that is older than the Dead Sea Scrolls by an archaeologist. This is some crazy stuff, man. There's been a lot of talk about the age of the scriptures. Are they trustworthy? Can we rely on them? And there is more and more and more developments. But guys, before we get into that, if you're new here, consider subscribing. The channel exists to encourage, empower, inspire people to live a life that blesses God. My name is Ruslan. Let's jump into this, the oldest copy of scripture ever found, even older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let's do it.
They were excited. There was hope. Maybe this would be the exception. Maybe as they excavated this repository chamber, they would find something of value. But as they removed the soil and the typical bones and pottery sherds from this repository chamber, they didn't find anything of value.
When I first went into the repository, I was disappointed. I saw something which looked like a rock surface, which would be the floor of the repository. It had some earth accumulated on it, it had some stones accumulated on it, and nothing else.
So among the volunteers that year were a group of children from an archaeological club. And
so that guy in the red shirt, he is an archaeologist in this area, and so he's going through always trying to find these untouched tombs of these peoples, right? And so he opens up this tomb, basically it's describing, and he's like, oh, it's been raided. Like the floor was empty. There's nothing in there. It's already been raided by, you know, people that are just fooling around. So he also throws camps.
That's the tricky part about when you're doing this sort of work. Like, this isn't, a lot of this stuff is accessible to people, so people could potentially just go and completely destroy this stuff without even knowing.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's like modern times people. I also think it's like people just over the centuries.
Those hooligans from 500 years ago.
Well, like they described earlier in this video, you guys should go watch the full thing, where like they remove the top of the tomb because like stone, people that harvest stone for whatever, just ended up removing the whole top of the tomb. And then like a lot of years later.
So it sounds like this starts off and there's disappointment because what they were looking for, they hadn't found.
They're just trying to find some sort of ancient artifact.
Okay.
And one of them was a young boy named Nathan, who it seems had a particular talent in annoying Dr. Barkai.
We worked here with children. Among them, there was a kid who was especially a nagging type. He had the ugly habit of always pulling my shirt from behind, and when I would turn around, he would ask me a silly question. I looked into the repository and saw that the floor is visible. I said to myself, well, it is looted as all the other repositories in the other caves, but I had an idea. This is the place to put little Nathan. I thought that for a while I'm not going to see him, and that's an advantage. So he was asked to clean the place and prepare it for photography.
Yeah, hold on. You know daggone well they're not allowing this in 2023. This would be, I think this is technically corporal punishment when you're making kids clean and do stuff like that. So this is hilarious.
It's an internship.
Oh, okay.
No, I think it's like a summer camp, but
call free labor.
It's called free labor.
He was alone. He was bored. He had lots of equipment with him, and not half an hour passed that I was far away, and I feel my shirt being pulled from behind. When I turned around, I see him standing with two pottery vessels in his hands, almost complete.
Wow.
Dating back to First Temple period.
Wow.
That was against all the instructions. If he finds something, he had to call somebody over, one of the supervisors.
Pause it real quick. Google First Temple period. I believe that is this is BC. Like, this is before Jesus, I think.
During the First Temple period, so 1200 to 586 BC.
Yeah, so this is at least 500 years before the life of Jesus. The First Temple was built in 1000 BC by King Solomon after King David conquered Jerusalem and made it its capital. The temple was destroyed in 1586 by King Nebuchadnezzar. So it's First Temple period, Second Temple period, so on and so forth.
I was ready to suffocate him on the spot. In any case, we came back and...
This man finds the oldest Bible and he's just like all willy-nilly with it.
Well, he just found pottery.
I found out that he made the discovery of my life.
So here's what happened. At some point in the ancient past, possibly through an earthquake, the ceiling of the repository chamber had collapsed down and formed a false floor that sealed off the valuable contents of the chamber. And so this tricked the tomb robbers who came in and thought that there was nothing valuable in this chamber. And then later, it also tricked the archaeologist. And so it remained this way until...
Hold on, this man is the real life Indiana Jones, bro.
Oh, yeah.
This is crazy.
It's nuts.
I love it.
Also, like the odds that the roof falls down but doesn't crush the pottery,
Right.
it just like perfectly seals it, right? It's nuts.
That's cool.
Nathan came into the tomb with his tools and doing what boys do. He ended up punching a hole in the false floor. So I can only imagine what must have been going through his mind when he looked down through this hole and saw all these intact pottery vessels.
And that is when little Nathan came in and began his destructive activity, which led to the discovery that the layer of rock, which I thought to be the floor, actually was not the floor, but a layer that got unpeeled or exfoliated from the ceiling, and it buried underneath it the very rich contents of this repository.
And so amazingly, Dr. Barkai got what he'd hoped for, what he'd dreamed of, and that is the discovery of a tomb chamber that had never been touched, that had never been robbed out in antiquity.
Wow.
The finds
nuts.
represent the only repository which was found intact to be known in Jerusalem to date. Inside this single chamber, we had more than 1,000 objects.
So then they started excavating the repository chamber.
Hold
So
on
we
real
have this.
quick. You know what's crazy about this? Is there's always excavations happening in Israel and in and around Jerusalem.
Really?
All the time.
That's nuts.
Like when we were there, this is a new excavation. This is a new excavation. We just found this underground street that Jesus likely walked on to get to the Temple Mount. Like
Wow.
all the stuff was like constantly new stuff being found. We just found a coin from Jesus's day. Like it was crazy. So there's always excavation happening.
That's crazy.
This layer system within the repository chamber, with the layers at the bottom being the earliest and the layers at the top being the latest.
I want to see where exactly. So, oh wow, that
He's
is
going
deep.
in.
You have a foothold.
Right here to the left, yeah. Okay, Dr. Barkai.
Yeah.
So where in here did you find those
Close
scrolls?
to the bottom and in the inner side.
The inside back, all the way
Yeah.
back here?
The order usually is that people take stuff from the benches, they put it into the mouth of the repository, and it accumulates near the mouth of the repository, and then they come and move it inwards, and the new load comes in through the entrance. So whatever is close to the bottom and close to the innermost part is the earliest.
So in the back of the repository chamber, down at the bottom layer, right next to the true rock floor, the excavators found two small metal objects. These two items were plaques of silver rolled up like scrolls. Essentially, they are two small silver scrolls.
It was a
Wow.
plaque of silver which was rolled around itself about 6 times, and when it was unrolled, it was showing to be covered densely with ancient Hebrew characters.
Wow. Okay, now this is crazy because it's silver. If you guys don't know, a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls were papyrus. So when the New Testament was formed, this is in Hebrew, so this is the Old Testament they found,
Ancient Hebrew.
ancient Hebrew. When the New Testament was formed, the church was underground, so they weren't using like amazing supplies. They were kind of piecing stuff together with whatever they could find.
Yeah.
So the fact that this is written on silver is extremely intriguing. I'm guessing this is Old Testament, meaning that it's again from the First Temple period, 500 years. So this is when the creation and the preservation of Scripture probably wasn't as underground.
It was inscribed, 19 lines of writing in minuscule Hebrew characters. The first word which I deciphered at the opening was the name of the Lord. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. This is the private name of God which appears whenever the English version has the word the Lord in the Hebrew Bible. This is the unpronounceable tetragrammaton, the secret name of God.
In the Bible, in 2 Kings 21:4, Yahweh says, "In Jerusalem I will put my name." And in verse 7, Yahweh declares, "In Jerusalem I will put my name forever."
Wow.
So now, amazingly, the name Yahweh has been found archaeologically in an excavation in the city that bears his name.
That's pretty
That's
cool.
crazy.
That's nuts.
The first time we have the owner of the temple, the dweller of the temple of Jerusalem, found in Jerusalem itself. Later on we discovered that there are several more appearances of the name of the Lord on that piece of silver.
Not only was there Hebrew writing on these silver scrolls from Ketef Hinnom, but it was realized that what was written on them comes directly from the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament.
Yeah, what
Both of
passage was this? I'm curious to see what passage this was.
them had versions of the priestly benediction, which is mentioned in the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 24 to 26.
Wow. So
first
this is, hold on. So this is like
Old Testament.
old, right? Book of Numbers.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
that's nuts.
Silver scroll reads, "Bless you, Yahweh, and keep you. May Yahweh shine his face upon you and be gracious to you." And the smaller scroll is translated, "Bless you, Yahweh, and keep you. May shine Yahweh his face upon you and give you peace."
This is nuts.
More than that, the burial customs and the comparative material you have is very clearly evident of First Temple period beyond any doubt.
The history of Jerusalem is often broken into two time periods, the First Temple period and the Second Temple period. The First Temple period begins when Solomon builds the temple in Jerusalem in the 10th century BC, and it's destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC, which brings the First Temple period to an end. The Second Temple period begins when Zerubbabel rebuilds the temple in Jerusalem, and it is destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. So the Hebrew in the Second Temple period looks different than the earlier Hebrew that's used in the First Temple period. So if we use the name
That's what ancient Hebrew is, right? Like the language also evolved a bit.
That's crazy.
Yahweh as an example, in the Hebrew of the Second Temple period, God's name looks like this. But on the silver scrolls from Ketef Henem, it looks like this. The difference is a later form of Hebrew used in the Second Temple period, where the Hebrew found at Ketef Henem is an earlier form from the First Temple period. And so this is why the silver scrolls are dated to the First Temple period, and more specifically to the 7th century BC.
This discovery is of the earliest biblical verses ever discovered.
That's crazy. The earliest copy of biblical verses ever discovered from Numbers.
The Bible was made up by the white man in the South.
Wow.
That's crazy.
They predate the very famous Dead Sea Scrolls by several centuries. So these are the earliest biblical verses. They date back to the 7th century BC, to the time of Prophet Jeremiah.
The more and more these archaeological discoveries are made, in my opinion, these things just confirm that we know at least the scriptures to be reliable.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like they clearly had a culture of preserving spoken word into a very accurate written word, as found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, as found in this little silver scroll here. And so you could assume that the same, even though it's centuries later, that the same people or like the same culture, that same ability is passed down even when the New Testament happens, when they're writing it down 40 years after the death of Jesus.
Yeah, because it's an oral tradition.
Yeah, oral tradition. They're writing it down 40 years after, but like it's kind of the feeling of like, oh, we might die soon. We should probably write this down the same way that we wrote down these other passages that have remained super accurate. So it's like you could. So some people are like, well, oral tradition's not accurate. It's like I don't think it's the same oral tradition that we have nowadays, where it's like, oh, my buddy John said, what'd he say? Well, he said something like, you know what I'm saying? Like it was a memorizing, like, and so it's just interesting seeing it happen for the Older Testament, and then you can assume that's also how it worked with the New Testament.
Absolutely. Shout out to that channel. Go watch the full video. That is, what was the name of the channel? Ancient Bible.
Expedition Bible.
Expedition Bible. Amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. Tying in the history and the archaeology around the Bible, which there's a lot of, man. There is a lot of real life Indiana Jones stuff. So we see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask Him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when He answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.